You've talked a lot about government needing to rein in business. Business is too big. Crack down on Wall Street. Maybe you could be more specific. I mean, exactly what do you want to do to the companies? Maybe you could take 3 or 4 examples of where, businesses are too big, and what exactly are you going to do about it?
Well, it's not a question of exclusively businesses being too big, although that's an issue in some cases. It's a question about restoring balance to the system. The first place I would begin to restore balance to the system is take money out of politics in the way that money is currently in politics. Because if money is in politics, people with more money have more voice. And there are plenty of systems in the world that work extremely well and are not considered to be laggards in sort of their democratic standards, that have fixed duration political seasons and federally financed campaigns where people don't have the incentive or the ability to spend massively, and thus not the ability or the incentive to go out and seek unlimited funds from people, which gives opportunity to those with unlimited funds to have a bigger voice. Similarly, the role that lobbyists play in our system, and the muddling of the line between doing that and campaign finance is a problem. So I would start there. I do think that we really need to think about the size of financial institutions, for example, and that if they want to be a certain size, they need to accept a greater social responsibility in terms of the management of their assets. In other words, the bigger you get, the fewer risks you can take, because frankly, if you are big and you take big risks, the consequences of your failure are greater, and you need, for society at large, and so you need to take those things into consideration. I also think that there are serious issues with regard to executive compensation that has become absolutely perverted in the United States of America, so that in the 1970s, CEOs would make on average 35 times what the average employee made, and today they make 350 or 400 times what the average employee makes. And things have gotten deeply, deeply out of whack in terms of that, and that not only leads to the perception that the 1% have rigged the system, it helps contribute to the reality of a few being able to benefit dramatically more than the rest. I think a fair tax code would go a long way towards rectifying this system. And that's not something that we've got. And most of America's growth was during periods in which the tax code was dramatically higher than it is today, including up to in 1944 when it was over 90%. But for most of the period of America's fastest growth, the top tax rate was over 70%. I think that it's not just a question of the size of companies, but the power of government to offset that size as needs be. So, first thing I do is take off the table some of the popular discussions at the moment, like let's get rid of the Environmental Protection Agency. Sometimes regulation saves society money. It saves society money in healthcare costs. It saves society money in terms of damage to the environment. It saves society money in a lot of other ways. And we have to also there's a philosophical shift. The purpose of our society is not to create wealth. The success of our society is not measured by the size of our GDP. The success of our society is measured by the quality of life of the people within our society. And therefore, we've got to take a leap from that philosophical thing and start saying, how do we invest in our society in a way that doesn't just accelerate wealth creation for the few, and because they're so big, that pulls up the average for everybody, but doesn't actually affect the bottom as much as it does the top, and move to a system where we say, no, we've got to have a fairer system. We've really got to create opportunity. I don't want a system. I mean, I have 2 daughters who are in college. They're, fortunately, they're in good colleges, and someday they may be employed. But for all the good, and they've been the best colleges in the world, the best system that you could possibly have, I don't think it's a good system if they can benefit that way and half the population isn't graduating from high school and doesn't get opportunity. Because ultimately, that's going to be a price socially that my daughters are going to have to pay in their lives.